Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Cole Phillips, author of The Adventure of the Twisted Truths and host of the Book and Dagger. And today we are going to be discussing one of the most interesting characters in all of literature. Now, if you know me, you probably have an idea of what universe I'm going to pull this character from. And if you guess Lord of the Rings, you would be right. Now, this is this character is a bit of an enigma, and I will preface this character before we start this video, I will preface this by saying that Tolkien himself, even in some notes that was uncovered, Tolkien himself was not really sure who this character was, or even like the full scope of his story. Now, this character only pops up in Lord of the Rings, and for like a couple chapters after that, he's referenced like twice, and we never see him again. And then in the Silmarillion, he's not explained at all, which is interesting because there's a lot of lore and stuff that is mentioned in the Lord of the Rings and then is described in depth in the Silmarillion. But interestingly enough, this one character is, you would think that he would be the perfect character to describe in Silmarillion. But interestingly enough, Tolkien never actually describes him in the Silmarillion, and because, like I said, Tolkien himself was not entirely sure what this character was supposed to be or represent or anything like that. Without further ado, we are going to discuss Tom Bombadillo. Now, for those of you who have read The Lord of the Rings, you're probably sitting there like, oh, yes, Tom Bombadillo. I love him so much because he's just great. He's a great character. And for those of you who have watched the movies and not read the books, you're probably sitting there like, who the heck is Tom Bombadillo? Do not worry. If you are a Lord of the Rings fan who has only watched the movies, and then you like have never read the Lord of the Rings books, I will be explaining all about Tom Bombadillo here. And I will also explain that this is once you hear my explanation, you'll probably understand why Peter Jackson did not stick Tom Bombadillo in the movies. That was kind of a bummer for me when I watched the movies that Tom Bombadillo was not in there. But at the same time, as a Tolkien fan, I get why they didn't put him in there. Now, I do know Amazon's like TV show, The Rings of Powers. It's like season 2. There's been like I think it's been teased that Tom Bombadillo is supposed to pop up. I'm personally a little worried because I know Amazon has not been entirely faithful to the source material here, and I'm a little worried they're going to butcher Tom Bombadillo, especially since he does not actually like pop up in the Silmarillion. Um, but without further ado, we're just going to go ahead and talk about Tom Bombadillo here, the character. So if we first meet Tom Bombadillo in the first book, The Fellowship of the Ring. So it's when this is also not in movies. It's a scene where Frodo, Merry, Pippin, and Sam are on their way to Bree. And on their way to Bree, they're going through the old forest on the borders of Buckland, which is like outside the Shire. And they're journeying through the forest, and basically there's these like the old forest is like has like trees that are alive and can move. Kind of not really, kind of like the Ents, but not really, because the Ents are like separate entities. They're the shepherds of the forest, of the trees. They're not trees themselves. And these are just like trees that can like move and talk. But basically what happens is Merry and Pippin, they go to sleep on this big old oak tree because they're tired, and the tree swallows them. And so Sam and Frodo are panicking, and they try to like set the tree on fire and like chop it open, like get Merry and Pippin out. And then the tree kind of like speaks to like Merry and Pippin as like, tell your friends to like stop trying to cut me down or else I'll crush you guys to death. And so Sam and Frodo are just like, what do we do? And so they just start running around crying out for help because Gandalf isn't anywhere to be found. He told them about the ring and then dipped. And then so Frodo's trying to get to Bree because that's where Gandalf said to meet him, and then it's all this crazy stuff. So basically, these poor hobbits are all alone in the forest. They've seen Nazgul. They've been helped by elves. They've also seen Nazgul. They know they're being chased by these really evil forces. And now a tree is swallowing 2 of their number. So they're like, we don't know what to do. So they're just running around screaming for help. And as they're doing this, so for me, when I first read the books, I was kind of like, what are we going to do? And then this is what was a really just like kind of funny, goofy, but also at the same time kind of oh heck yeah moment. So basically, as they're running around screaming and yelling for help, they hear this voice singing in the woods, and so they begin to run toward it without like without knowing why. Frodo and Sam begin to run towards the voice, and the voice comes closer and it's singing louder. And they hear this guy like singing about bringing water lilies home to his lovely Goldberry. And then they actually see the singer himself, and this is where the enigma starts because they say he's too big for a hobbit, but he's not tall enough for one of the big people. Now, this has led some people to think, oh, well, maybe he's a dwarf. No, he's not a dwarf. He does have a beard, but he's decidedly undwarven like. Now, if you've read any Tolkien books, you know what dwarves are supposed to be like. And if you read Tom Bombadillo, the description of how he acts and everything, you know that he's not a dwarf. Now, but basically, let's get back to a little more description. So basically, what happens is Frodo and Sam start running towards this man. They start yelling, "Help! Help!" And this man is he's described as having a like funny little hat and a bright blue jacket and yellow boots, and he's just bouncing along through the woods, singing a song, carrying a thing of water lilies on a big giant leaf. And he sees them coming towards him, and he shouts, "Whoa!" And he holds up his hand, and Frodo and Sam just they stop dead as if they've hit an invisible wall as soon as he holds up his hand. And he's like, "Oh, don't crush my water lilies!" And he's like, he sets them down, the water lilies down carefully, and he's like, "Now, how can I help you?" And Frodo and Sam are like, "A tree's eating our friend!" And now this is where, without blinking an eye, Tom Bombadillo is like, "Oh, old man Will, I can take care of him. I know just the song for him." He runs over to the giant. I think I said it was an oak tree. I think that's my bad. It was a willow tree. That was a giant willow tree that was swallowing Merry and Pippin. Basically, he runs over this big tree, and he like sticks his head into the crack and he starts singing a song, and then the tree like shudders and spits out Merry and Pippin. And Tom Bombadil like picks up a stick and hits the tree and is like, "Go back to sleep." And the tree like shudders and then it's like still. And so, and then the hobbits are like, "Thanks," and they're like, "We don't know who the heck this guy is," but they're just like, "Oh, thank you so much." And then Tom laughs and he's like, without hesitation, he doesn't ask their names, he doesn't like ask who they are, what they're doing. He's just like, "Hey, come to my house. We have supper and warm beds and stuff." And so the hobbits, without questioning who this guy is or anything, they're like, "Yeah, sure." And so Tom Bombadillo goes off again, hopping and singing and dancing through the woods, singing his song again, picks up his water lilies, and disappears in the woods. The hobbits are like running after him, trying to find him, but they hear his song, so they follow the song, and they come to this house that's up over, and I think it's called like it's up and over the hill or something, and under the hill. I know it says Tom Bombadil's house, which is like at this like hill, and there's this like path, and it's this really beautiful, just nice little place. And so basically, as they're approaching, they hear another voice singing. So they go in. They go inside the house. So they approach the door and they hear, "Enter, good guests." They go inside and they meet this lovely lady. She tells them she is Goldberry, daughter of the river. She's apparently Tom's wife, and I guess by daughter of the river, I think they mean like she's like a spirit, like a water spirit, but like in physical form. So it's kind of vague. She's never really fully described either. Well, I mean, she's described. They never really fully said what she is either. But she and Tom are married and they live together in this nice little house. And eventually, so they give Merry and Pippin and Sam and Frodo this big feast of like bread and butter and all this amazing stuff. And the hobbits all eat heartily, and then they're given soft beds to rest in. And Tom is like, "Heed no nightly noises," he says in one of his quotes in the book. And he says, "Fear nothing, for tonight you are under the roof of Tom Bombadillo." And so it's really interesting because then the hobbits wake up and they find it's raining outside. And so they look out the window, they look out of the house, they see Tom coming towards the house, and the rain is like not touching him. He's just like running, arms spread out, having a jolly old time, and the rain is like coming like not even touching him because he comes inside, he's not even wet. And so then he proceeds, he's like, it's raining, you guys stay here another day. And he's like, he proceeds to tell them all these stories of all the ancient world, all the kings and all the kingdoms of Middle Earth. And then it's really interesting because as they're staying at his house, he asks them about their journeys. And, oh, excuse me, Frodo begins to tell Tom Bombadillo about the ring and like why they're going. And it's really interesting because if you guys know anything about Lord of the Rings, you know that whoever's the ring bearers, they're very hesitant. They keep the ring to themselves and they're very hesitant to tell other people about it. But Frodo feels absolutely like nothing wrong with just telling everything to Tom Bombadillo. And there's this one really iconic scene where Tom Bombadillo suddenly says, "Show me this ring." And Frodo, without hesitation, pulls the ring out of his pocket and hands it to Tom Bombadillo. And Tom Bombadillo like picks it, kind of looks at it, peeks at it through his, peeks his eye through it, and then he like laughs, kind of spins it around, and puts it on his finger. And for a moment, the hobbits are just like, and then they realize Tom has not disappeared. Now, if you know anything about Lord of the Rings, you know that whenever you put on a mortal puts on the one ring, they will disappear because that's one of the ring's abilities. But Tom Bombadillo just like sticks on the ring and isn't affected by the corruption part of it at all. Like he's just like canceling out any corruption that it might be trying to do to him. And so then he like kind of laughs, he spins around, it vanishes, and it makes it reappear in his hand. And he gives it back to Frodo. And so Frodo's a little suspicious. He puts on the ring to make sure it's real, and he vanishes. And so he's kind of, and the hobbits, when Merry looks over at Frodo, he's like, "Where'd Frodo go?" And then Frodo gets up because he wants to make sure like the invisibility effect still works. But then Tom Bombadillo is like, "Hey Frodo, come sit down. Come sit down again. Take the ring off." So it's revealed that Tom Bombadillo can see Frodo when he's wearing the ring, which he's supposed to be invisible. So not only does the one ring apparently not corrupt Tom Bombadillo at all, but it also just like when other people are wearing it, he can see them even though they're supposed to be invisible. So this is kind of the first it's you're like sitting there like, who is Tom Bombadillo? And it's really interesting because they don't, like I said, they don't ever answer the books themselves because once as Tom Bombadillo is telling his stories, Frodo he straight up asks Tom Bombadillo, he's like, "Who are you?" And Tom Bombadillo is telling his story. He's like, "What? Who am I? I'm the master." And he's like, I've been there. He's like, "I've been there, ever since the beginning of time, and stuff." But he doesn't really say anything other than that. And this has caused a lot of people to speculate, oh, maybe he's Eru Iluvatar, the creator of Middle Earth. I personally don't think that is what it is because there are scenes in the books where, like he says, "I was there when like time began," but in the lore of Lord of the Rings, Eru Iluvatar was like he was there before time. And also it's there's like Tom Bombadil's power is only it's like confined to this small area of land, like his house and some of the surrounding land around it. Because as the hobbits go to leave his house, they're like, "Can't you come with us?" And Tom is like, "No, my power is only resides in this certain little area." But it's also there. Also, is interesting because as the hobbits leave, they leave Tom's house to go on their journey to Bree, and they get trapped in the tomb of this ancient king called the Barrows. And the Barrow-wights are these spirits that live around the Barrows, and they try to trap people and keep them in there. And so the hobbits all fall into this trap, and they're stuck in one of the tombs. And as they're stuck in the tomb, Frodo is the only one who's not really affected because he wakes up in the tomb and he sees that Merry and Pippin and Sam are all laying on the floor with the sword across their necks. So it's kind of hinted that they're dead, but I don't think I don't know. It's never really said if they're dead or if they're just under an incantation. But basically, Frodo, he hears this evil voice in a corner muttering this really cool like evil but really like cool rhyming incantation, and he sees this like arm like thing begin to snake out of this corner, like start going towards Merry and Pippin. So Frodo, there's like swords, and he grabs on the sword and he hacks at the arm thing, and it vanishes. But then he doesn't know what to do. So Tom Bombadil taught him this rhyme. So Frodo, uh, he sings this little song that Tom taught him. Tom was like, "If you are still in the borders of my land and you get in trouble, sing this song, and I will be there to help you out." So Frodo sings this song, and then a second later, he hears Tom Bombadil singing an answering song, and Tom Bombadil just like bursts into the tomb, and it's just like sunlight just streams in behind him, and he's like sings this song about how the spirits just like get out and vanish, and the spirits will like shriek and flee away, and then he just basically destroys the tomb in a way, and he picks up Merry and Pippin and Sammy, carries them out, and he's basically like sings this song over them, and they like color returns life. So either he lifted an incantation or he brought them back to life. It's never really said. I think it was more so that he removed an incantation from them than brought them back to life, because it is revealed. Now, this is the argument that some people make, that he is Eru Ilúvatar in like physical form, is that in the Silmarillion they say that the only person who can create life, like put the secret fire, which is Tolkien's way of describing like the spark of life inside a person. The secret fire is like only Eru Ilúvatar is the only being powerful enough to create like life, like beings with that spark in them, like the spark like that gives them life, and not only life but independent like will and thought. And but now it is also said that the Barrowets are like spirits, and they have like magical like incantations. So I think it's not so more that they kill the people that they trap in the barrows, but they place a spell on them to make them like sleep, and it looks like they're dead. And Tom Bombadillo can remove that spell with his power in his little land. But basically, Tom Bombadillo removes the spell from them, and he gives them these swords that are gives them these swords that were from the tombs. These swords were forged by the like ancient men of Númenor, and they're especially potent against evil. And these swords, as you know, if you're watching my previous videos, you know these swords actually play a pivotal role later on. Because like Merry actually uses one of these swords to stab the Witch King later on in the third book. But then Tom Bombadillo like helps them. He takes them to the borders of his land, and they ask him last time. They're like, "Hey, can't you come with us?" And also, this is another reason I don't think Tom is Eru Ilúvatar, because if Eru Ilúvatar was in physical form, he wouldn't be bound to a land. He is the most powerful being in all of Middle Earth. So if he came to Earth, like Middle Earth in physical form, he could go anywhere. But Tom Bombadillo says over and over again, he's like, "I'm only master of this little land." He's like, "I'm not like." He's like, he literally says, "I'm not master of the Black Riders from across the world." And he says he's not a weather master of other areas outside his land. Now, he can control the weather inside his own land, but he can't control it outside his land. That's another reason why I think that he is not Eru Ilúvatar. But yeah, regardless of whether or not he is Eru Ilúvatar or another just being, Tom Bombadillo is an insanely powerful being in Middle Earth, and he's also just a really interesting character. Like you meet him, and he's just kind of along for the ride. He's just like dances in the woods, sings, eats meals with his wife, has a great time with his life. But he's also really powerful, and he banishes evil spirits and makes trees cooperate. So that is the character of Tom Bombadillo. And like I said, as a Tolkien fan, I'm disappointed he wasn't in the movies, but I understand completely why they did not put him in, because one, like the movies are already insanely long. So if you are not now as a Lord of the Rings fan, I would love to watch a like 9-hour version of the Fellowship of the Ring. But there are a lot of people who they have not seen Lord of the Rings. They're not going to want to sit down and watch like a 9-hour first movie. And if they had included the whole story like Tom Bombadillo, that would have tacked on at least another like 30 minutes, maybe an hour to an already 3 hour long movie. And a lot of people just cannot sit through that. So I understand why they cut him out. But at the same time, he's a very interesting character. And I hope the Amazon show does him justice. I'm not really sure if it will, based on just season one and all that, and the lore breaks they've already done. But if they do him justice, that would be amazing because Tom Bombadillo is a phenomenal character, and he's really one of my favorite Lord of the Rings characters of all time. He's just this really fun, goofy, cool guy. But so that's we'll conclude our discussion on Tom Bombadillo. If you guys have any thoughts on him or have any characters you would like me to discuss in future videos, just go ahead and let me know in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time.